What if the most feared ruler never asked for power at all? Hades didn't conquer a kingdom, he was assigned one, and the realm he ruled would define him forever, whether he wanted it or not. The gates of the underworld closed behind Hades the moment the realms were divided. There was no battle to win them, no crowd watching, no celebration marking the start of his rule. One decision was made, and the separation was final. Everything below the earth became his responsibility. Darkness wasn't symbolic here, it was literal. There was no sky above him, no seasons, no horizon to look toward, only endless caverns and the steady arrival of souls crossing into his domain, one after another, without pause. This wasn't a throne he earned by force or ambition. It was a role assigned to him because someone had to do it. And once Hades took that role, there was no returning to the world above. Unlike Zeus or Poseidon, his power didn't expand outward, it enclosed him. The more authority he gained, the more confined his existence became. From that moment on, the living world stopped seeing Hades as a god among gods. He became something distant, permanent, associated only with endings, not because he chose that image, but because power, once placed beneath the world, sealed him there. After the Titans were defeated, everything was a mess. The old system was gone, and someone had to step in and organize the universe all over again. So the three brothers did what gods do when no one wants to make the hard call. They left it to chance. They drew lots. Zeus got the sky, the visible world, thunder, clouds, storms, power that people could look up at and instantly recognize. His authority was loud and impossible to ignore. Poseidon took the sea, massive, restless, always moving, dangerous, yes, but alive. A realm that showed its strength through waves and earthquakes. And Hades got what was left, the underworld. Not because he chose it, not because he was punished. It was simply the last realm on the table. A place nobody wanted, but somebody had to run. From that moment on, the separation was set. Zeus ruled above everyone's heads. Poseidon ruled across the surface of the world, and Hades ruled beneath it, unseen, unreachable, and rarely spoken about. Out of sight, out of reach, and slowly, out of the story. The underworld wasn't chaos. That's what later stories get wrong. It was a system, and without that system, nothing else would work. Every soul that died had to go somewhere. Without structure, the dead would wander, linger, or return. The boundary between life and death would collapse. That's why the underworld needed rules, not cruelty, but control. Hades understood that immediately. He organized the realm into defined spaces. Judges weighed lives. Rivers marked transitions. Some souls were rewarded with peace. Others were punished, but never randomly. Even suffering followed limits. No favor could erase a sentence. No anger could extend one. That consistency mattered. Unlike Zeus, Hades didn't rule by intervention. He didn't step into mortal affairs to correct behavior or assert dominance. He didn't seduce mortals, level cities, or reshape the world through sudden displays of power. Once a soul entered his domain, the rules applied. Until then, he stayed out of it. But distance has consequences. Because Hades didn't appear in the living world, people filled the silence themselves. Fear grew where explanation didn't exist. His name became something spoken quietly, not out of rebellion, but unease. Over time, his realm stopped being understood as a place of order and became a symbol of dread. Not because Hades was cruel, but because he ruled the place everyone feared going and never left it. At first, mortals understood Hades' role. He wasn't evil, he was necessary. Someone had to rule the underworld to make sure the dead went where they belonged and that the balance between life and death stayed intact. But as generations passed, understanding slowly turned into fear. People no longer saw Hades as a god doing his duty. They saw him as the final stop, the place no one returned from. Death itself became frightening, and Hades, by association, became the face of that fear. Stories began to change. Whispers replaced facts. Rumors exaggerated his power and darkened his image. The underworld stopped being viewed as a neutral destination for souls and started being described as punishment, a place of suffering, shadows, and terror. The more these stories spread, the more people believed them. Hades noticed this shift, but he chose not to stop it. He didn't correct the rumors. He didn't defend himself. He didn't explain his purpose. That silence became a turning point. Hades realized something important. Power didn't need justification. Gods who explained themselves appeared weaker. Silence, on the other hand, made him untouchable. The less he said, the more people feared what they didn't understand. So he ruled differently. Not with grand displays like Zeus, not with open cruelty or unnecessary punishment, but with strict order and distance. He followed the rules of the underworld exactly as they were. Even when those rules pushed him further into isolation, he became colder, more detached, not because he enjoyed it, but because that was the role he had been forced into. Ironically, the god who never wanted attention became the most feared, not because of what he did, but because of where he ruled. From that moment on, Hades was no longer judged by his actions, his fairness, or his restraint. He was judged solely by his domain, death itself, and in the minds of mortals, that made him terrifying, whether it was true or not. The tension wasn't explosive, it was constant. Every soul that crossed into the underworld reinforced the divide. The living feared Hades. The gods rarely spoke of him, and Hades continued ruling in isolation. Power accumulated quietly. The underworld grew vast. Souls filled its paths. Judges ruled. Rivers flowed. Systems functioned. And through it all, Hades remained restrained. He didn't expand his influence upward. He didn't challenge Zeus. He didn't demand recognition. That restraint made him stable, but also invisible. Yet invisibility carries its own weight. The more the world feared him, the easier it became to blame him. Death, loss, misfortune, everything final was placed at his feet, and Hades became a symbol of endings, even though endings weren't his choice. He didn't decide when people died. He only managed what came after, and that distinction was lost. Hades gained authority, but not freedom. He ruled a realm that never slept, a kingdom that only grew, a system that depended on his constant presence. What he lost was connection. No festivals in his honor, no cities built for him, no praise from mortals. His power was absolute, but deeply confined. Zeus gained visibility. Poseidon gained chaos. Hades gained permanence. The cost was loneliness. Fear kept others away. And Hades allowed it, because fear made order easier to maintain. Respect through terror required fewer explanations, but it also ensured he would always be misunderstood. The world stabilized, life continued above, death continued below. The balance was held. Hades remained exactly where he had been placed, the most consistent ruler among the gods, the least involved, the least celebrated. Ironically, his restraint made the system work. No coups, no rebellions, no chaos spilling upward. The most feared realm was also the most controlled, and the god who wanted power the least ended up holding it the longest. Hades is remembered as a villain, but when you look closer, his story isn't about cruelty. It's about an assignment, a God-given responsibility without choice, authority without escape, power without admiration. He didn't rule through fear because he enjoyed it. He ruled through fear because it kept the system intact. And that leaves an uncomfortable question behind. Is the most feared ruler always the most dangerous, or sometimes the most restrained?